Hey everybody, today I am going to be talking about The Game. This film came out in 1997 and it was directed by David Fincher. This was Fincher's follow-up to the film Seven, which came out in 1995, I believe, and that was a big step forward in Fincher's career, just because this was an original script and an original work. It wasn't from an existing franchise like Alien. The Game is more of a metatextual sort of film compared to Seven, and it is more of an ambitious film, I think, particularly thematically. I actually think this is a very underrated film for David Fincher, and it's not perfect, I would say, but I do think that it is a very elegant, very crafty Hitchcockian type of thriller. And I think what I like the most about it, or one of the things I like the most about it, is the sense of humor about it. It is very aware of its conceits and how it is using them in the meta-examination of the narrative, the subliminal messaging, how it can reveal an existential crisis in a modern society. But for me, the most important aspect of the film, and I think that the thing that I take away from it, and I think this is a very interesting thing, particularly for Fincher at this point in his career, I think it's quite a mature idea, but it's the idea that, this is a satire that is examining how dependent we are on the illusion of trauma. We depend on the illusion of risk in order to have a revelation of sorts in this society, in modern society. And this film reveals all of Fincher's strengths yet again, just like Seven did, especially aesthetically, his technical bravura. He is able to reflect that alienation so well in this modern, as I said, modern existential crisis. I always say, he is very much a classicist in terms of the type of filmmaker that he is, yet, he's using all of these kind of modern digital touches here and there that give us subtle hints of the new age. It's a foot in both worlds, built so intricately, and I think that is one of the things that is so captivating about him. And notoriously, he's known for being a stickler for detail and the intricacies of the suspense and how to build everything. And again, that's another one of his strengths. And this film is the kind of movie that unfolds constantly. It is always keeping you guessing, almost till the very end of the movie. And once you think that the plot has settled in, it starts shifting again, like a flock of birds or something. But I do think that the twists of the movie, they're not always the most natural, the most organic, especially when you do get to the third act of the film. But at the same time, I think that this movie knows very well that it's never fully in reality. Like I said, it is always aware of its conceits, which I think is why the film is so successful for me, why I buy into it the way I do, because it is always bringing out that sense of self-awareness. And in a clever way, I don't think that Fincher gets enough credit at all for his sense of humor. He's known more for being like really dark and all that. And it's like, no, I think he has a great, very dry, subtle sense of humor that does work perfectly in social satires such as this. Films like Gone Girl and Fight Club, this film, etc. But the film is an examination of how this like postmodern entertainment, postmodern art has an effect on viewers. And so, like I said, it has that very classical approach to introduce a lot of those formulas that we know, those ideas that we're very familiar with, so that he can sort of pull the rug out from under us. And Hitchcock always did that. He would very neatly package a very clever, very entertaining sort of suspense thriller that has a very clever angle, but there's a lot underneath it. A lot to pick apart, and it does kind of demand multiple viewings a lot of the time. And I think here, the setup is absolutely fabulous, and I love the first act of this film. I think it is absolutely engaging. It establishes your main character very well. Our main character is Nicholas, and he is played masterfully by a very sleek, very distant yet charismatic Michael Douglas. He gives you everything that you need to know about the character, and the script does as well. He's very rich, he's very comfortable, he's very removed from the day-to-day realities of modern society. And therefore, he just feels that he is above any sort of inconveniences that happen to him. He's very much like that asshole boss we've all had. He doesn't really have much interest in making friends or really even being that casually polite. But Michael Douglas is just such a master. He's such a movie star, and I love just his expression. He plays it with this reserved sort of judgment that is very intriguing. And again, it feels removed, yet at the same time you are very drawn to it, like a movie star. You need a movie star in a part like this. You need somebody who is very different from who we are. We cannot relate necessarily. A lot of us cannot relate to Nicholas on a basic level, but somebody that charismatic gives you the illusion that they are relatable in some sort of way. And I think Douglas does. Why he's so powerful and why he carries through, I think, so many decades just as a performer is because, he has that sense of humanity always peering through, even though he's often playing these symbols of like corporate establishment, corporate success. I love the way he looks and just the lighting, the way he's framed. There's a lot of kind of silvery blues and kind of very sterile gray suits. Very calculated camera shots that are very distant. You know, one thing that I love about Fincher is that he very rarely goes for the easy sentiment, the easy close-ups. Everything is very controlled, which is of course a great contrast to what the characters are experiencing. Well, Nicholas is experiencing in particular on screen. This is a movie about somebody who really wants to be in control. So he lives in this world where he has this illusion that he is in control, and it is, you know, through his privilege, it's through his money, his status. Yet it will all unravel through this premise, through this idea, this call to adventure that is this game. He basically gets to be the star of his own movie. You know, he's given clues, he's given literal keys that unlock mysteries, plot twists, and all these sorts of things that are guiding our protagonist, or, you know, our fake protagonist here, through this ego death and rebirth. A revelation, of course, that is going to lead the person to become a changed human being. That is a full, you know, narrative arc. And you see so many winks at the audience, a lot of kind of subliminal messaging, like that scene you see where he's filling out all the paperwork at the beginning of the film is very much like that, you know, the scene in Clockwork Orange, the infamous brainwashing scene. And, you know, there are a couple throwbacks that seem to be from The Conversation by Francis Ford Coppola, like the Virgin Mary figure as an example, as well as, you know, him trying to flush the toilet with the blood in it and it's coming up, that nightmarish sequence. And then, of course, Hitchcock, you know, there's always a Hitchcock comparison I can draw, just those dizzying twists and turns and that strange feeling, you know, that unsettling feeling we have when we're placed in the shoes of Cary Grant in North by Northwest. And with these kind of classic nostalgic ideas here, it's like he's rebuilding something. He's sort of deconstructing the mythos and just giving us kind of a more modern take on that. And all the devices throughout the movie are, you know, they're very cheeky and they're meant to be very overt, but they're very, very well done. You know, like as an example, like what I was just mentioning, the blood in the toilet, and you have all these like Polaroid pornographic images set up with cocaine, very much like cliches that you would see from a movie in a hotel room. Always represented to be like the literal shame of the protagonist, like the unconscious mind bleeding into the subconscious. It's like nothing that the character is experiencing is real, but the character is not real either. You know, it's like Fincher's very aware. It's like even just the movie, the game, it is constructed as a manipulative device. And like I said at the beginning, the thing that I find the most compelling about the film is that it's really not necessarily, to me, about a protagonist's journey towards enlightenment. It's or a rebirth or anything like that. It's more about how we must construct the illusion of risk in order to push us to a real sense of trauma. In this weird feeling of how we feel like we need to be pushed to the very edge, to the point of devastation, to the point of loss like this, in order to feel like we are liberated from the shackles of this civilized society that we've built. And it's often very dependent on something else. It's rarely, you know, just coming out of something organic. This is built by a corporation to construct said realities for us, to give us this rebirth. That to me is the most innovative and interesting thing, just, you know, the key to the point of the whole film, which is isolation. And often that's a theme, you know, running through Fincher films, just this desire for audiences to live vicariously through the main character, the protagonist, who is forced to have this existential crisis. And I know that some detractors fail to connect with the main character, with Nicholas, but I don't think you necessarily need to on a profound level. We connect more to the experience that he's placed in. We will project our own fears of losing everything that we have in the modern world, our own fear of, you know, being hacked, losing everything, credit card numbers, bank account numbers. No matter what, we can all relate to the idea of being afraid of losing the illusion of control, the illusion of security within the mind. And seeing a movie like this that is, you know, on the surface very much meant to be escapist entertainment, really kind of subvert those expectations, I find to be very exciting. Even just the set pieces themselves, they are literally set pieces in the film, and I just love that. Meant to trick our main character as we are tricked along with him, because we are given very little information until the very last moments. And this feeling throughout the movie that is removed and almost dreamlike helps me suspend disbelief in certain situations, especially, you know, the idea behind the game, exposing the illusion in the way that they do at the very end of the film, where Nicholas is literally pushed to try and kill himself. And I do admit a lot of that, and, you know, the party scene does feel a bit unearned or a little bit slight in terms of the way that it's presented. When the curtain comes up, in a sense, and he's able to return home a changed man, there is this feeling of dissatisfaction, I think, precisely because of of what I mentioned, that he's pushed to this again by a corporation that was paid to manipulate him. And that feeling is strangely quaint, and you feel that at the end of this movie, I think, to the point where it feels very unsettling, and it is that dreamy, removed feeling for me. It felt like they were forcing the conclusion a bit too much, and especially the sense of humor in it as well, and it just never finds its footing in terms of mood, and I had the very same problem, though to a lesser extent, with Seven, which also does feel a little bit too neat and tidy at the very end, the last few minutes of the movie. It's just too on the nose, and it takes me out of what otherwise is a very powerful ending with Seven. And so I would have liked for this third act to be maybe re-examined, re-edited, because I think if the payoff had been very, very strong, this film could have been, you know, an absolute masterpiece. I think it's really, really good. And I'm glad to see that it has developed a bit of a cult following, because I really do think it's underrated and more people should see it. Especially if you're a Fincher fan, you're going to love this movie, I think. But, you know, even just a fan of movies, it is very entertaining, but you also can gain something from it. I think that's a little bit different. It may not have the depth of a more meta-examination sort of film like a Videodrome, but I think for what it is, and especially at this point in Fincher's career, he continued to prove himself to become one of our great modern American auteurs. And that is the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I am going to plug my website as always. It is deepfocuslens.com. I do commission portraits and prints. I'm an artist, so if that's something that you are interested in, you can always go to the shop and check it out. And if you have questions about a commission or something, you can always email me in the description box below. And I would also like to give a shout out to my Patreon supporters. Thank you guys so much for everything. If you are interested in becoming a patron, the link is below for that, as well as my social media information. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.